on Bamba Sport. Free for life.
Good evening from the Thomas More building here at Strathmore University, Nairobi, Kenya, and welcome to the first ever Kenya Rugby Union Chairmanship Debate. My name is John Allen Namu, and before we get into this debate and to the very deep and interesting questions that we'd like to hear from the three candidates who are up for election in March, let us all be upstanding within this auditorium for our national anthem. Inviting to the stage is Miss Christina Pondi, who is going to sing us our national anthem.
Mungu nguvu yetu, ilete baraka kwetu, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na undugu, amani na uhuru, raha tupate na ustawi.
Thank you very much, Christine. Before we all sit down, I'd like for us to remain upstanding in memory of a very, very important person who was lost to us in the month of February. And we had this service this afternoon, Mr. Richard Sidindi from the Impala Saracens. Let's all be upstanding and have a moment and observe a moment of silence. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You may have your seats. Now, what do they say about rugby? Rugby is a game that they play in heaven, or so the expression says. It's a game where passion meets talent, meets aggression, meets comradeship. And it's a game where each person, every person of all shapes and sizes, from all backgrounds, can come and meet either for 80 minutes or for 14 minutes, sweat it out on the pitch, and leave as friends. That's the ethos of rugby: integrity, passion, discipline, spirit, teamwork. It's some of the best things that represent our country. But the rugby that we have in this country right now is in a moment of crisis, or you could call it a moment of opportunity. We are deep in debt as the Kenya Rugby Union. We are facing perhaps one of the greatest threats to rugby, and it is a threat coming from the very most important stakeholders in the game, the players who take the field every Saturday. We're facing player apathy. We're facing players who know what they want, who know their rights, and those rights perhaps are not being met and respected. We're facing serious questions of integrity and turmoil within the board itself. But we're also facing an opportunity for Kenya to become one of the greatest rugby-playing nations on the continent. Bar none. We're not even talking the Springboks here. We're facing an opportunity where age-grade rugby could produce some of the finest talent that this country has ever seen. We're facing an opportunity where Kenya could get its first rugby stadium built for purpose, where rugby could become a national sport and one taught as a core curriculum sport. We're facing that opportunity, an opportunity to lift up people from wherever they've come from and make them equals as teammates and as competitors on the rugby field. And to debate this very, very serious time in our lives, this very serious time in the life of rugby in Kenya, we have three individuals who have offered themselves up to offer leadership for rugby in a time of crisis, a time of opportunity. Leadership that, dare I say, we're also looking for in other circles in this country, whether politically or economically. Leadership that will see rugby become the first sport in Kenya to really attract people, bring families together, unite a country, and make Kenya proud as it has done. I'm sure the people in the crowd here have had their hearts soar with pride every time the Kenya Sevens win a match and sink to the bottom of our shoes every time we lose or every time there's controversy. Those three individuals will be charged with both sides of this coin, and I'll be introducing them shortly. But first, I haven't introduced myself. My name is John Allen Namu. I'm a journalist, former rugby player of the oldest rugby club in Kenya, Nondescripts RFC, and myself, a Kenyan international, a person who's watched from the sidelines as we have won and we have lost, and we've fought wars and we've won them together. But I'm not the man of the hour, nor the people in this crowd. The man of the hour I shall be introducing shortly. And because rugby is a game of comradeship, you know, we were supposed to toss a coin, but they all agreed as to who was going to come out first, the most senior one of the candidates this evening. He's a former Kenyan international himself, who delivered passion to KCB Rugby Club as a part of the administration there during his time. He's also served with the KRU. Let's introduce to the stage Mr. Asiko Owiro. Let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Asiko also told me to tell you that he's a retired farmer, and he's giving up farming for cultivating rugby in this country. Asiko, would you like to say something to the crowd?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As said, Angela, my name is Asiko Owiro. Rugby has been my life since I was a child, even before I started playing. I believe I'm fit for the job. I've played rugby throughout at all levels. And I'm sure I'm fit for the job.
Thank you very much, Asiko. Unfortunately, we don't have your microphone, but we'll be fixing it in a moment. Please take your position there at the first podium. Second in line, former under-23 player, former back row like myself, former chairman of the Impala Saracens, and he himself is the current secretary of the KRU. I'm sure we have a lot of questions of the current administration, good and bad. He is here to answer some of them, but he's also here to offer himself up for the leadership of the Kenya Rugby Union. Let us introduce to the stage Mr. Odur Gangla. Let's give him a round of applause. Bwana Gangla, would you like to say a few words to the crowd?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy and humbled to be here in front of you. I've seen a lot of people that have traveled from all over the country to be here, from various clubs. How seriously taking this engagement of determining who should take this game forward to the next level. I look forward to engaging with my counterparts, and I also ask for your vote. Thank you.
Finally, yet another man who served with the KRU as a director and a board member. He was called up at one point in his rugby playing career, but unfortunately wasn't able to honor that call-up for, I think, because he was injured at the time. He is a quantity surveyor by profession. He, as I've told you, has also served on the board of the Kenya Rugby Union. He coincidentally also happens to be one of the only ones who has published a manifesto, but I'm sure you also have plans for what you'd like to do for rugby. And his name is Alexander Sasha Mutai. Sasha, please join us over here on stage. Karibu to the stage, Sasha. You can take your place there and say a quick hello to our guests here.
Thank you very much, Alan. First of all, by a show of hands, how many of you here think that Kenya has the talent to take us to the Rugby World Cup in 2023? I think that shall guide our debate today. Thank you very much.
All right. The gentlemen are in place. The candidates are ready. And we are ready here as well. So I'm just going to give the people at home a few minutes to grab their popcorn because it's going to be a long ride this evening. And I'll give you two a few minutes here in the crowd to position yourselves with your questions. We're going to take a short break here at Bamba, Kenya. We will be back in 2 minutes. So don't change the channel, don't touch that dial for this inaugural Kenya Rugby Union Chairmanship debate. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and we are live here with Bamba Sports at the Thomas More Auditorium here at the Strathmore University in Nairobi, Kenya, for the first ever Kenya Rugby Union's chairmanship debate. The candidates are at the podium. My name is John Alanamu, in case you just missed it. If you're following us online, you can stream on www.bambakenya.co.ke. The hashtag, for all of you who are following this on Twitter, is hashtag KRU Decides. You in the crowd can also help us and hashtag this as well and get this conversation going. I'll be coming to all of you, including you at home, later on this evening for you to be able to get your opportunity to ask questions of every candidate. Now, as agreed prior to the beginning of this debate, the start of this debate, there will be a running order of who gets to be asked the first question. The first question, though, will really be a pitch from each one of our candidates. And I'll start with you, Asiko. In 2 minutes, tell us why you should be the chairperson of the Kenya Rugby Union.
Thank you, Alan. I believe I should be the chairman of the Rugby Union because it's really time for big change. The change is actually in 3 R's. We need to revive, rejuvenate, and regenerate the game of rugby in Kenya. Why me? I have the time, I have the experience, both corporate and in rugby leadership and management, proven not only in CV but in practice. I'm a retired 29 years banker, retired as a director, put in place structures and procedures at KCB as part of its transformation over the years, which I'd like to replicate at the union. Secondly, I know that I'm a people person. I'm very ready to talk to all and sundry.
You have a minute to go.
We have enough factions and divisions and issues at the union right now. I think over the years I've managed a lot of negotiations, proven experience in that. And with all that, I believe I am really the outside person, not so much even outside, but the person who's been in rugby, taken KCB rugby to where it is today from its infancy, close to 18 years ago,
30
or
seconds.
30 years ago to where it is today. I want to give that time and that experience to the sport in this country. And I believe I'm definitely well poised to deliver that.
All right, thank you very much. I'll move on to Ms. Odwor Gangla. Same question, Odwor. You are currently part of the board. And I think this is a rider to this question because it's something that's been asked both to people that I've spoken to as well as people online. You are currently a member of the board. What are you going to do differently? Why you for this position and why now?
Thank you. I'm Odwor Gangla. I've been in the game for close to 30 years now, starting as a player. But in the last 8 years, I've been involved in administration, starting off as the chairman of Impala Rugby for a period of 4 years before I was elevated to the KRE secretarial role. In both roles, I believe I've made a tangible contribution to the game. And if I look at my period at Impala, starting with that, because it answers the question why. When I took over, the team was headed for relegation. But by putting in place the right structures, I drove it back to the top tier, finishing at number 2 in my last year. I put in place a lot of programs, right from the academy, started the women's rugby, put in place commercial programs. So I believe that experience rounded me and prepared me to be in the board. In the board, it's important to clarify that the role of the chairman and the secretary are very different. And these are constitutional rules.
You have 1 minute.
The secretary is responsible for maintaining records, for communication, and for basically ensuring the admin functions work. The chairman is tasked with the responsibility of providing strategic direction and is basically responsible for carrying that mantle. And I believe that because of that extensive experience and with the tangible work I've done, the relationships I've built, I've worked with all the stakeholders in the game, I believe I'm well suited. And that's why I've offered myself. I think I've done well in the terms of the tasks I was asked to do as secretary, and I think it's time now to move a notch higher.
All right.
Thank you.
You've got 20 seconds, and I'd like to ask you a quick question. Was there nothing that you could have done as secretary to improve the position of the Kenya Rugby Union that you're going to do now as chair?
I believe I did a lot. When we came, the board was dysfunctional. Today we have a functional board. I'm very proud of that.
I'll stop you there. All right, so you'll answer the rest of that question later on this evening. So, Sasha, onward to you. All right, I also have a rider for you to this question.
Yeah.
Explain to us why you should be the chair, but also explain to us within these 2 minutes, and it's a hard task, but within these 2 minutes, what role that you are currently playing administratively in any rugby setup, in any rugby club in this country.
Okay.
You can go.
Thank you very much, John Allen. It's time to actualize our potential. We all know, and that's why I asked you this question at the beginning, who amongst you think that with our talent in Kenya, we can make it to the 2023 World Cup? That's quite short term. We have the talent, but we're not actualizing our full potential. We were just a game away in 2014, 2015 Rugby World Cup. We could afford to lose a game to Zimbabwe and still get to the Rugby World Cup final. We have so much talent in this game. It's just, I actually say that our talent is falling off the trees. But our structures are not there. We need to start rugby from the grassroots, from primary school level. The kids need to start playing rugby. We were lucky to start playing rugby at 14. There are some people who have played for Kenya and started playing rugby in university. Someone like Okuku. Now, when our players go play international level rugby, they're playing
1 minute, Sasha.
people who started rugby at 6, 7 years old. All right? Now, when you have a 10-year head start or an 8-year head start, it's very hard but with our talent, we actually show it. We are world beaters. In 2013, we got to the Rugby World Cup semi-final. 2009, we got to the Rugby Sevens semi-final as well. I was director of Sevens that time. I was vice chairman of Kenya Rugby the second time when we did it in Moscow. The other question is, and I was not running the agenda that time, I was the vice chairman and director. I worked with Richard Omuela and I worked with Mwangi. My role in Kenya Rugby, in clubs, I support so many clubs every weekend, and they're there to be stated every weekend. You help them to play their games. We have to send money, and that's what I want to stop. It's not sustainable. For clubs to play and honor their fixtures. I'm doing this for so many clubs, at least 13 clubs.
All right, your time is up.
Good.
I will ask you a rider question to that as well. My question was, what position do you hold in any rugby club?
Currently, no. I was the secretary of Mean Machine. Yes, but right now, I just help from the outside.
All right. To the first question now, gentlemen, and again, I'll start with you, Wanasiko.
Yes.
And we're going to deal with, within the next couple of minutes, we're going to deal with the question of sponsorship, money. And the first question starts with one controversy that the entire country witnessed. Last year, Kenya Sevens players blacked out their jerseys and covering the title of a sponsor during an international tournament, presumably over unpaid allowances. The opinions about whether this was right or wrong, I'll leave to you. Even in some of the best years of rugby, though, this has been a perennial issue, which is the non-payment or delayed payment of players, right? And how should this be resolved? I'll start with you, Asiko.
Thank you, Alan. The issue of sponsorship in Kenya Rugby emanates from several reasons. One, a clear lack of transparency. When we, for example, when we handed over Kenya Rugby Limited to a regime that took over after Richard Omwelas, and at that time I was a director of Kenya Rugby Limited and a signatory to account, we handed over 40 million shillings, which had been raised through proper management and running of Safari Sevens. Immediately thereafter, in 6 months, that money was down, spent and gone. With that happening, surely any sponsor will be in doubt. With that, I mean transparency. It must be clear, and we must be open and sure and overt with how we manage our funding that we have.
You have a minute left.
To rejuvenate that, first and foremost, is to put in clear corporate governance structures, clear audit procedures, and overtness about how we manage funds. Today, even as I'm in rugby, I don't know how we manage the grant if we still get it from the IRB. So I feel putting in structures, corporate governance structures at the union level will clearly give the confidence back to the sponsors, and they shall be back.
You have 30 seconds.
On the players, we can only sit down on the table and talk. It can't be the hammer on the head. I believe we must get to a round table and talk and agree.
All right.
Payment must go direct also. What players deserve should go directly to them. It shouldn't go through any other party, as per contract.
Thank you very much. Same question to you, Odwar. What would you do to be able to resolve impasses like this? How do you resolve that perennial issue where players have not been paid on time or not paid at all, given your current position and given that you were in the board at the time that this controversy took place?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think you have to look at Paris in the context of what is the situation of the union and what has it been for a long time. KRE is one of the few federations which actually publishes its financials. And if you just comb through it, you'll see where the problem lies. For a long time, the union has had significant funding challenges, and this has gotten worse over time. There was a time we had got good sponsorship from the likes of Safaricom, and they vacated around 2014 going into 2015. And from that time, we actually came into the board to try and remedy that situation. And we tried to rebuild the confidence that was there. Unfortunately, the pullout of SportPesa, who had come in as the headline partner, was quite significant. And even in trying to remedy that, and given the level of assignments last year, it was a very tight squeeze. That said, I think we can prove as a board that we honored our commitments to the players during that period. Paris was, what do they call it, a brain explosion in my mind. The board may have erred in certain areas. Maybe we didn't fulfill that particular payment.
You have 1 minute.
But also, blocking the shot kills the whole game. It doesn't punish the board. But even today, clubs are struggling to get sponsorship, because every meeting you go to, you start, what happened in Paris? No one distinguishes between KRU, the club, the tournament. we all lumped together. So it was a collective loss for us.
Yeah.
The way forward is really to build on the relationship so that even when things are tough, people are able to sit and agree, and I think we can bring that to the table going forward. Because I think it was really communication rather than even money that was a mishap in that tournament.
Yeah, but in your view, whose fault was it that would have led to something like that in Paris?
Like I said, two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
So even if you apportion the blame to the board or to the players, to me it doesn't matter. The thing is, there was a problem. But I think everyone has learned out of that experience, and we can march forward a lot stronger. We'll have to take time to rebuild the confidence, because the truth is, every partner is asking what will be different. And
all right.
Given more time, I'll share my thoughts on what
I'll stop you there, because there's a certain thing that's being kicked down the road, and Sasha, the one who's going to hold the baby, with regard to efficient use of money, right? So Asiko started saying they left a positive bank balance. Oduor said that they've been managing their funds well, but because of a pullout, then the things that happened. However, it fell on you at a certain point in this discussion with regard to the mismanagement of funds and of sponsors specifically.
Yeah.
So as you answer that question, keep that in mind, what they said.
All right. Thank you very much. I think the issue right now, and I know what it is lack of credibility between the union and the sponsors and the players, the playing unit. What we just need to do is get back the sponsors on board. In 2006, we had little money. We were running, I was the director of Sevens. We had Kenya Breweries Tusker sponsorship. It moved on to Virgin Atlantic, which I managed to secure. And that was only £72,000 at that point. But we used it very frugally, very well. It went to the players, to the playing unit. It's not that we were flush with cash all the time. When the sponsor releases money to you, you're not in charge of that. So you have to manage it. But you need to be in constant talking with your players. But right now what's been happening is that the players are being talked at, not talked to. Now, we just need to get back the credibility. The sponsors are willing and waiting to come in because of this Finance Act 2017. You put in money into sports sponsorship,
yeah, you have
and,
a minute
and the corporates get a tax rebate. So it's a no-brainer that they want to be associated with a winning brand. In terms of mismanagement, I mean, the structures are there in the union. My colleague here is the secretary. The structures are put in. There's a CEO. Before there's a GM, there's a CEO, there's a head of finance. Now, I'm not in the union right now, but I know that there's a debt of over 100 million shillings. And that's the elephant in the room. How do we address that?
All right. Now, with 1 minute to rebut this, because that allegation falls squarely in your gambit. Sasha mentioned two things. A, that regarding Paris, the players were being talked at and not talked to. And secondly, that given the bank balance that we have, the so-called elephant in the room, it's been a question of mismanagement rather than sponsors pulling the rug out from under your feet. Could you respond to that with 1 minute?
Thank you. I think on the first question, I don't know how Sasha knows the players were being talked at and not to, because we always have a consistent engagement with the players. On the issue of sponsorship, much as Sasha has been out of the game, he's had the opportunity to pass on some of these sponsors to the clubs who are all struggling. I don't think only KRU needs sponsorship. Even the clubs need that, whether it's Kitale or Eldoret, instead of this handout culture. So it's important for people to just be truthful about some of these things. On the issue of mismanagement, and the beauty with KRU, our accounts are public. At the end of 2013, KRU had a net debt position of minus 60 million. Minus 60. You can check the balance sheets. Today, but next week we'll release the accounts, because we have to do it by Wednesday next week.
Yes.
And the figure is not 100. It's lower than that. And you'll see the growth from 60 to where it is now, it's about 82. Given the constraints that we had, given the assignments that we had, given the decline in revenue that we had, we were able to do very well. Because your revenue has shrunk, your cost base has increased, but you've managed to balance.
You've got 10 seconds.
You cut off a few things here and there, but overall, I think, given the environment we're working with post the pullout, I think we did well.
All right. I'm going to come back to you, Sasha.
Yeah.
Right. Still on the question of sponsorship. You've made an allegation here that Oduor has rebutted, The point is we still have a debt,
Yeah.
right? And we still have a debt that's owed to very different people. You, in your manifesto, have said that you can bring sponsors back on the back of credibility within the board and proper management systems. But let's be realistic, right?
Yeah.
Which sponsor is going to come into the Kenya Rugby Union, pony up over 50 million shillings, which is a debt that they didn't generate, and all in exchange for equity? Do you have the people who you're talking about lined up? Are they waiting in the wings? And is it really money that's the issue here, Sasha? Yeah. I'll give you 2 minutes to respond to that, plus an additional 30 seconds to respond to what Odwor said, then we'll come back to you, Asiko.
In terms of sponsorship for clubs, and it's true, clubs are having a problem attracting sponsorship. And that is directly related to what is happening at the top of the board. I even actually, about a month ago, was asked to try and get sponsorship for the Kenya Under-13 International Schools team that's going to the UK this month. And one of the big corporates here said, yeah, it's very hard to sell rugby right now. We are aligning ourselves. It'll be a hard sell. So even to sponsor kids rugby, it's a problem because of what is happening at the top.
How do you intend to do it?
I will work with the current directors on the board. We need to come in and bring back credibility. I've worked with these sponsors both in and out of the union, professionally and in rugby.
These are the same members of the board that you've demonized just a few minutes ago.
I'm struggling.
How are you?
John Allen.
You see, the thing is, they've lacked proper leadership. I am here to prefer proper leadership. That is what I'm saying. I will work with them. I've played against him. We've worked together, So, yes, that's what the problem has been. Lack of proper leadership, which I am going to provide. So the clubs are going to also attract that sponsorship because we'll clean up this thing at the top. We'll talk to government. Government right now doesn't want to look at us because of the debacle that happened last year. Okay? The sponsors that will come in, we'll have to be very frank with them and tell them, to retire this debt, let's come up with a formula. Maybe 10% of this will have to go into retiring the debt. We have to be very frank with the 82 million. I've been corrected. So 82 million, we need to get rid of that.
30 seconds. There's something that I asked in that question. Yeah. Do you have the sponsors who are willing to pony up? Because like we've talked about here, this is a very big debt. Do you have the people that you're talking about who are going to be able to come on in a year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who are they?
You want me to answer that right
yes.
now? We're talking to a mining company and we're talking to a sport betting company. Yeah.
All right. So
I won't divulge more.
All right. To the members of the audience at home and the members here, you have had a mining company, a sports betting company are waiting in the wings, according to Sasha. Now, I'd like to move back to you, Asiko, right?
Yep.
We're still on the question of debt, right? We have somewhere between 60 and 82 million shillings, perhaps 82 to 100 million shillings, if Sasha is to be believed or if Odwor is to be believed. You've not been in this for a while, right? But I want to ask you a straight question about this debt. Do we need sponsorship or do we need a government bailout?
I think we need not only both, but as usual, charity starts at home. We must come up with our own initiatives, which I believe I have 2 or 3 in mind, that will help us generate some revenue. And this is what will show confidence in ourselves, and that feeds on to the sponsors. Unless we do our own initiatives and come up with our own ideas and prove that even if out of the 60 we raise 6 million, then I assure you the sponsors will come back.
Yeah.
So I believe there are initiatives we can do, either through membership, reviving the Safari Sevens, with proper, overt, clean, credible management.
All right.
And we will get back there.
We're talking in generalities now. You're offering yourself up for the leadership of the KRU. What is your specific roadmap? And you've got 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer.
My specific roadmap is first to ensure that we have corporate governance structures in place at the union.
Were they not there when you were there?
When I was there was, well, if they were there, or what was there was observed and was credible enough for the sponsors to come and help us at the Safari Sevens and even help the union at that time.
Yeah.
But these were lost or they were not observed. So it was lack of credibility and observance of corporate governance.
So it's not new structures, really. It's just observance of the law.
It's observance of the rule and sticking to the structures, principles, and procedures. One or two of them definitely need to be tweaked, be it in human resource management, be in day-to-day financial accounting and reporting. Those must come in place.
All right.
Yeah.
Odwar, I'll come to you to rebut some of the things that he said, because he's saying that at the time that he left, there was corporate governance that was respected and observed. And I think this is for both of you, both you and Sasha. So I'll give each of you 30 seconds, if you will. What's the problem there? Why is there no corporate governance? Should ASICO be believed?
I don't know if ASICO has read any of the governance documents that we've developed as the board, so that it is talking from a point of knowledge. We have world-class governance procedures which we've adopted at KRU, but I must also point out that in the implementation of the work, you have to look at what's in front of you, and that's why the KRU Constitution gives the board the ultimate control to make decisions. So you look at what's in front of you, but yes, there's governance and the governance works. No shilling has been stolen from KRU. That I can confirm to you. There's a very unfortunate narrative going around that we are corrupt. I dare those people to bring their evidence pointing at corruption or money lost at KRU. It hasn't happened under our watch. That I'm very confident about. So when people talk about governance, and this is the same thing that stops sponsors from coming, because they keep reading on social media, KRU is corrupt, KRU is corrupt. You're creating a wrong perception of the game. You're not hurting the board, you're hurting the game you profess to love. It is inconsistent.
Okay. It may be inconsistent, but it's a narrative that is out there. Sasha, I'll ask you to build on that. Is that smoke or is there fire with regard to corruption in the board?
Well, I'm not aware of any corruption. All I'm aware
Thank you, Sasha. He's answered my point. We are not corrupt.
Yeah. It's misallocation.
No, I didn't call them corrupt.
All right.
It's misallocation of resources.
The implementation
So talking about
and following the rule is not what's happening.
talking about the fire and the smoke.
Yes.
We've been there in KRU. We're always fighting fires because the team needs to go. There's no money. Money is brought from here. It's a game of musical chairs. So budgets are not adhered to because there's a fire to be taken out. So when players say they're on strike, money comes from development.
Yeah.
So there's nothing left for development. That's now the structures that we need. We have not said anything about corruption. It's misallocation of resources. But we have all been here, and it's all about firefighting. Now it's time to get rid of the fire with proper structures, bring back the money, and the money is there. When you ask me, we can talk about the money is there. The people are willing, corporates are willing to come in and be with us. And let's go to heaven. Let's go to Canaan.
Okay. So I'll come back to you, ASICO, but it's still on the question of corruption. You might have not have mentioned it, but there, as Odwar had said, there have been these allegations. I've spoken to a number of people, both past and present members of the board, as well as players and people who are invested in this game. This is the allegation that they're making. I'll quote them, right? They say that there are certain members of the board or affiliates to the board let's talk about affiliates first, right? Certain affiliate clubs who use their status as bona fide rugby clubs to curry favor with you and are only relevant every 2 years, now will be every 4 years when it comes down to a vote. Essentially, these are briefcase rugby clubs that are just offering up their vote for you to be able to pad your numbers, right? I'll start with you, ASICO. Are you, yes or no, are you aware of such clubs' existence?
Having attended several past AGMs,
ASICO, yes or no?
the answer is yes,
All right.
and that has happened.
Same question to you, Odwar. Yes or no, are you aware of these kinds of clubs?
We've weeded out a lot of
Yes or no?
clubs who don't
Yes,
play.
yes or no?
We have weeded out clubs who don't play.
Yes or no?
Our subsidy only goes to clubs who play.
Yes?
And
Or
we
no?
give consistent subsidies across the board, whether in Kenya Cup, Nationwide, or Championship, based on your participation in the game. I've
is
been
that
to very many games.
Is that a yes or is that a no? Are there clubs
I
that
can
have
only
done
talk
this?
about the clubs who we actively deal with, who play their fixtures. Once
Why
you
are
play your
so
fixture,
evasive about this? Is it a yes or is it a no? Are there clubs that have done this in the past that have asked for bribes in exchange for a vote?
possibly, I do not know, but Everyone knows how I work. I don't do that business.
All right. I'll move to you, Sasha. Yes or no? Have you heard of that existence?
Yes, and the Constitution has a way to deal with it. You just
Yeah.
have to place 75% of the fixtures. So
All right.
it's dealt with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been approached personally to be able to bribe someone so that you can get a vote?
To bribe, I've never taken a bribe, never paid a bribe.
Same question. Yes or no? Have you been approached?
No.
All right. Asiko?
I think I've really managed one club throughout, and even when I carried the vote, it's a club of high integrity. I was never given a vote or given any money for it.
All right.
Never.
Okay. We're still going to carry on with this question of corruption, but right now I'd like for us to take a break. Remember, to the members of the audience here, as well as the people who are watching at home and around the world, who are streaming on www.bambakenya.co.ke. You can follow us as well on Twitter with the hashtag KRU Decides. Get your phones out, start tweeting your questions. I'll be coming to them later on this evening. Remember, we're still dealing with corruption, and there's lots more in store for this inaugural KRU chairmanship debate. Back in a moment.
Okay.
20 teams. Over 300 rising stars. And tons of stunning goals. Raw, uncut, and true to the game. It's the true spirit of Kenyan football. The National Super League, live on Bamba Sport, free for life.
Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you're joining us, whether on TV or following us online. Online, of course, it's www.bambakenya.co.ke. The hashtag on Twitter is hashtag KRU Decides. And of course, we are here at the Thomas More Auditorium here in Strathmore, Nairobi, Kenya, for the inaugural Kenya Rugby Union Championship debate. Before we went to the break, we were debating corruption, and that's where we're going to pick up where we left off. And the first question, now it's open season now, Asiko, no more first questions.
Thank you.
All right.
Much appreciated.
And I'm going to ask a question of governance, which is related to corruption. And this is with respect to the selection of the national sevens coach. Members of that selection committee, when the selection was on, came out after the board's nomination of Paul Murunga, Murunga, the current coach of the national sevens squad, and said that he was second last in their criteria, in their scoring with respect to who was the best person for that job. And specifically, some of the people that I've spoken to have talked about credibility issues, corruption issues with respect to his time as assistant coach. Can you speak to those allegations that the board ignored the advice of that selection committee, and is he, in your view, the right person for the job?
Thank you for that question. I was anticipating it. I think, like I said, clause 10.1 gives the board the discretion to make decisions in the best and highest interest of the game. When the report came to the board, we looked at the different scores and the ratings, and there was no significant statistical difference between number 4 and 5. We looked at the first 3 who are all foreign. When the treasurer did his computations, what is actually the cost to KRU of having a foreign coach? In addition to his salary, you have to get him air tickets after every leg to go back home, accommodation, transport, etc. So he said, forget the foreigners. What did the decision come down to? It was a very simple decision, and we looked at, firstly, while Paul was rated slightly lower than Kevin, he had coached at senior level for about 9 years. He had been the head coach for his club for a total of 9 years, compared to Kevin, who had coached at senior level for only 2 years. So we thought that that was a material difference. Number 2, Paul had been in the IRB circuit before. So we looked at that and said, that carries significant weight, given that you're going into a new environment and there's likely to be a lot of changes in the player environment. The third thing we looked at also was the fact that Paul was part of the winning team in Singapore, which was an important thing that the board also gave consideration to. So while we appreciate the role of selectors, at the end of the day, the board takes the risk, and that was the decision of the board done by consensus. We discussed, we looked at the pros and the cons, and we arrived at it. So based on the process we ran, we were confident to give Paul the job. We back him fully, and I'd urge the whole country to get behind him. This nitpicking is not going to help us. If we identify areas where he needs support, we can channel those through the secretariat. We are very open-minded, because there's no person I know who's happy when Kenya doesn't do well.
That is true. However, the question I asked was about his credibility, about integrity, the same questions that we were debating before we went to the break. Are you confident in his credibility, his integrity, as concerns the issues that were raised by that selection committee?
We looked at the issues which were raised at the time around his credibility and questions about integrity. There's a lot of mud everywhere. And none of these allegations against Paul has ever been proven. In 2016, I was on the board. In fact, I'm happy Director Paula is here. We tasked Director Paula to lead a board inquiry into those allegations around Rio, and no one came forward. So you can't castigate the board. When things go wrong, you have information, and you sit back. So there's nothing today on record which shows Paul did A, B, or C. It's just perceptions.
All right.
And it's unfortunate. You should not condemn people unheard.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, did he get an opportunity to address those allegations?
In terms of?
Did you raise them with him, perhaps in the process?
Yes, during the reviews. There was a review.
And he responded to those?
He responded to the allegations.
All right. I'll leave it at that. Asiko, I'd like to ask you a question that comes from Twitter, and the question's from Shalom Morioki. The union is a reflection of the clubs, especially regarding corruption, player apathy, and mismanagement in many respects. Beyond adhering to the Sports Act, what measures will the Secretariat that you would lead put in place to ensure that clubs toe the line in terms of integrity? You have 2 minutes.
Alan, it's a straightforward best practice issue. A good example is what you've just asked, Edward Gangler. If you're going to hold interviews, why hold interviews and then pick somebody? Hold another selection process. Good practice HR is you must respect your interview process. If, and indeed I agree, you can have interviews and have the prerogative of selecting the third candidate or fourth candidate, and you justify it, come out and tell people why you made the choice. Don't just keep quiet. Hence the reason why everybody still thinks nobody's coming up strongly to back PAU. If the union made a decision, you come out and explain it to the rugby fraternity. We have made this decision on these grounds. If you don't do that, I'm sorry, the accusations continue.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I believe we must put in proper procedures and practices. They didn't stop there. They've gone and appointed a CEO. They've gone and appointed a new 15th coach without following due process. Just tell Kenyans, the rugby fraternity, we as the union have decided to do this.
All right. I know you were rebutting what Odwara had said, but I'd asked you a different question. What do you do at club level to ensure that club membership toes the line with respect to integrity? Now you have 30 seconds.
From the union level, from the union perspective, the main approach to this would be to put in the structures and systems and procedures at the union level and cascade these down to all clubs.
Okay.
Clubs must toe the line and also follow the same procedure. Clubs that are running well today have proper selection processes. Players are selected, using a committee. And
you have 10 seconds.
So I feel it will just be cascading best practice all the way down from the union to the clubs.
All right. Yeah. I'll ask you the final question with regard to integrity, governance, and corruption. Sasha, again, another allegation that has been raised by different people that I've spoken to is that members of the board or members affiliated or who can influence certain people within the board of the KRU have been using that influence to get people who they know or perhaps companies that they run themselves to provide services to the KRU. Now, is that an allegation that you've heard of? Is there something that that holds any water to this?
I've heard of that.
You've had this allegation.
Yeah.
So, with respect to that allegation, is that happening now, and what would you do to change that?
That allegation, I've heard it, and for me, when I come in as chairman, it will be not like business as usual. We need to respect the core values of World Rugby, which are integrity, respect, solidarity, passion, and discipline. These are well documented by World Rugby. Now, when I come in, and of course we restore credibility and we'll work here with the current directors and the new ones who are coming in, our partners will come back, new ones and the previous ones. If I'm giving money and subsidies to clubs, I expect a full audited report. Now, you're not going to get the next chunk of money in the next season if nothing is kosher. It's very simple. You earn it, you get it.
All right.
Yep.
I'm going to give Odwara an opportunity to respond because you are the man in the arena with respect to some of these allegations. I'll ask the same question. Have you heard of those allegations about carrying favor to get to influence tenders for specific services or products? And what have you done, A, as a current secretary, and what will you do if elected chairperson?
Thank you. We put together a code of ethics as part of our governance documents, where if anything happens and you have an interest, you declare your interest, you're not involved in the bidding process, you're free to tender, because even in normal corporates, people are given the opportunity to declare their interest in a particular item, and then the board makes the decision if it comes to that. So I think there's a way you can manage conflicts. Conflicts are not necessarily as evil as people make them to be, provided you don't sit in where the decision is being made, and you declare your conflict. On the second question around the club accountability.
Yes.
Last year we amended the regulations, working closely with the affiliates, and as of this year, every April 30th, clubs have to file returns with KRU for them to be able to get the next level of subsidy. So we are already ahead of the curve in that regard, because we are putting money into these clubs to enable them meet their fixtures, and it's also a requirement of the Sports Act that there must be a level of accountability from the clubs.
Okay. All right, Sasha, I'll return to something that came up as part of the conversation in the first part of this discussion, which is how you are going to work with people that you have openly castigated. And I think the same goes for you, Asiko. How are you going to work with members of the board who are listening to this debate right now and see you as a person who's pointing the finger at them?
Well, as I said before, I think the board is lacking proper leadership, and I'm here to give it. I've been a leader, captain in school, rugby, youngest director at the point in 2006, and vice chairman as well. It's all about teamwork. It's not about one person, okay? I remember in Form 1 when I came into Strathmore School, I got a team. I was elected, chairman, captain, and in the first term we lost every game. We did not win a single game. So my classmates, class of 91, Strathmore, remember now in second term and third term, we won every single game. We didn't have exceptional talent in the team, but we were sports team of the year, and I'd never seen that in Strathmore, in the school. It's all about teamwork. Use people's strengths. I know your strength is this, maybe you're not strong in this field. Yeah. It's all about building together. As a unit, I mean, the world is our apex, you know? So yeah. I'll work with them. All right. But I think that's why I ran 2 years ago, to provide that leadership, and I'm here again. I failed in the last bid, but right now, I think it's more than ever necessary right now to come in and steady this ship and take it where we want to go.
You know, we are just 2 years away from the 1-year anniversary of the handshake. Perhaps what I'm talking about is how you're going to reconcile the statements that you're making with the reality that you have people who...
I'm laughing looking at Richard.
Right? I'm sorry for asking this again, but I'm looking for something clear for them who are sitting down and ruminating about this to go and take home.
I don't beat about the bush. When I said in an interview, my first television interview in this process, I said I gave the board a D- collectively. Of course, there are directors who are working and others are bringing them down, but I don't think the environment is suited for good work over there. Yeah. You know, when you're in conflict, all the time, as I was saying, fighting fires, you don't even have time to sit down and think. So mine is to change the whole environment and to provide proper leadership and steady this ship and take it, as again I said, to Canaan.
Okay. All right. So let's see if you'll get there. Siko, let's hear your answer in 1 minute.
I think to begin with, I'm not running with any faction. I'm running alone for chair. That clearly shows you that I'm ready to work with anybody and everybody. Mm-hmm. The history, my history in people relationships, which actually even reached a director level at some point in time at the bank, involves working with over even 5,000 people. And I relate as a people person with anybody and everybody. It might be said that I'm abrasive, and at times forceful, but unless you're forceful and abrasive, you won't get things done. Mm-hmm. But on the contrary, it's also a weakness at the times of mine that I could appear very happy and go-lucky, but then that same happy-go-lucky who's smiling with you will insist on delivery.
All right.
And I think my record is proven both in the social level, in the sports field, and in the corporate level.
Okay, Odur, final word to you to speak to this very issue, right? You're currently in the board. There might be people that you agree with, there might be people that you disagree with. Again, going into the rugby grapevine, one of the methods that a person of your position might want to use if you become the chairman is a SGM, to try and kick people who you don't agree with out. Are you going to use... And I know I already know the answer to this question, but perhaps it speaks to your methodology as a leader. In what kind of conflict resolution mechanisms are you going to use? And if it comes to a head, how are you going to be able to navigate those choppy waters?
That's a very good question. For people who have been close in the game and who know my strengths, one of my greatest strengths is actually reaching out to the other side and trying to find a middle ground and a unanimity of purpose. I work even with people who voted against me. I support their clubs, and it's known. Yeah. So I don't bear grudges against people. We fight a lot at the board, but the beauty with our board, once we resolve, and we don't take votes. I think we took a vote once in my 3 years, and we said we'll never take a vote. If we don't agree, maybe we cool down and we come back and we hammer it so that you build consensus. And that's something I've learned from our chairman, Richard. It's very important to build consensus, to listen to different shades of opinion in the room, and to get everyone involved. I was tasked by the board to deal with the referee situation, and I can see Chairman Karim is here.
You have 10 seconds. I'll ask you about the question of referees, but just finish.
So just to say, my style is very different. Karim is here, he's a ref. He can comment.
Okay. All right. We're going to move to a question that I'd like each of you to just spend about 30 seconds asking. And it's a question that I received from a member of the audience this evening. His name is Paul Murunga, played in, I think, the inaugural Safari Sevens tournament, servant of the game. Asiko, is being the chairman the only way that you can serve rugby?
Definitely not. I have not been the chairman. I've never been the chairman, but I've served the game of rugby for well over 40 years.
Then why are you here?
I'm here because I think it needs a different head at the top that can really nurture and lead the sport to the next level.
Okay.
Yes.
Odwar, same question. If you lose, right?
Yep.
Will this be the end of Odwar Gangla and rugby?
I'm a self-confessed rugby addict, for those who know me. So I'm not leaving rugby. And most certainly, I'll serve in any capacity. I used to coach before. I coached the ESS team for 2 years.
Yeah.
So I believe I'm multi-skilled.
Okay.
So, but beyond that, moving to the question around just service to the game, it's something that's very dear to me.
All right.
I'm very passionate about this. And to me, having served as secretary, and our board has been very successful. We're the only board which has won a World Series.
All right.
We were ranked 21 in the 15s.
I'll leave it at that.
We're the Africa Women's champion.
So
it's only natural that the next chairman comes from the board. We have the track record.
We're over 30 seconds now.
Thank you.
30 seconds, Sasha.
You'll have to give me 45 seconds now.
All right. I'll give you 30, and we'll borrow the 15 somewhere down there.
Oh, okay.
Let's go.
If I lose, I lost 2 years ago, and here I am again.
Yeah.
And in between that, I've been supporting clubs, helping clubs. Even the national team women's coach, I gave him a ticket to go to New Zealand personally,
Yeah.
and that would help Mwamba Club as well as Kenya Rugby Union as a whole. So I'll be involved. Rugby, once you're in for life. So, and you know, the late Otieno Kajwang said there's no passionometer. The three of us here have a lot of passion. Everybody who's come over here has passion.
Okay.
But there's no measure of passion. Who has more passion than the other? I agree. No passionometer.
All right.
But we're here forever.
Let's all agree that we're all very passionate about this game. Your moderator included. Now, we'll move on to another key issue, which is player welfare, right? First question, I'm going to come to you, Siko.
Yep.
Right? Now, you've been part of the union. You've also played this game, and you haven't served very recently, but you know what this game is. Player welfare, again, like, related also to the allowances issue. This is a perennial issue, right? And I want to talk about this in the first question in light of what recently happened in the repechage. Right? We have very key players at the national level being injured, coming back and not finding insurance to be able to treat them, right? What is your plan specifically on how to ensure our players at all levels, to ensure that there's some modicum of cover? Let's start with you.
Thank you, Alan. Importantly, amongst the rugby fraternity, we have a myriad of insurance professionals and gurus. I see no reason why we can't put out a bid and offer tiered insurance covers for all our, at least starting with the national team. And like I said, we'll then replicate this down to the club level.
Yeah.
Some clubs have insurance cover, some don't. But if we get this collectively, even any insurance early learning student will tell you it will be much cheaper and it will be possible. Okay,
you've got 20 seconds.
That for me is what must immediately happen. It should happen yesterday. It is a very sad situation to have players carry our flag high and then come back and not be treated for 3 months. That is unacceptable.
Okay.
So that's my plan.
All right, Gangla, you're in the board. You perhaps have context about what took place with respect to those players. Answer that very briefly, because I want to hear from you what your plan is with respect to player insurance at all levels.
I think last year was an abnormal year for caring, given the challenges we had. When we went to repechage, you must have insurance. When the players came, I think in the return to play protocols, maybe at times you can be told you're good enough to return, but then they were not able to. And In that period, the insurance was up
Yeah.
to December, so it lapsed.
All right. I'm sorry, Odur. We're seeming to have a slight technical issue with sound. So I'll just like to apologize to you and to the audience here, especially the one at home, who would really like to hear that answer. We're going to take a short break to try and fix this. But when we get back, we'll give Odur Gangla the opportunity to answer that question and the many others that are now coming in thick and fast on Twitter and on other social media platforms. Remember, this is the Kenya Rugby Union's inaugural chairmanship debate, streaming live on Bamba Sports. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi,
My name is
Dylan Kerr,
David Rudisha,
Victor Onyama, and you're watching
Bamba Sport.
Bamba Sports.
Amber Sports.
Middle over flat press, 80 early flat, 6 right over press through the dip, 80 flat, 6 left over press, forward jump and along 6 left free to stay middle count.
All right, welcome back. We're here at the Thomas More Building in Strathmore University, Nairobi, Kenya, for the inaugural Kenya Rugby Union Chairmanship debate. When we went to the break, Odur Gangla, current secretary to the Kenya Rugby Union, was answering a question about player insurance. I'll let you pick up where you left off, Odur.
Thank you. First of all, I must just mention, in today's Star newspaper, there was a very touching story about Arthur Owira.
Yeah.
And his recovery, and he did acknowledge the contribution of both KCB Rugby and Kenya Rugby Union in terms of his recovery and his treatment. Mm-hmm. And that really is the gold standard, where we always look after our players. Like I mentioned, last year was a very tough year for us with the whole financial dislocation, a lot of assignments and the like, but it's still no excuse. The cover was there up to end of December. And now we just had a hitch in terms of the renewal. The cover was then renewed, and the players have since been treated. And it's unfortunate. It's the sort of thing that should never happen. Yeah. We never sit as carrier and conspire. Let's injure the players in terms of their return to play protocol. Players are so important to us.
Odur, I'd like to give the last 30 seconds of this answer to what you are going to do as chairman with respect to that.
Thank you. I think the issue of insurance, Siko has already talked about. We've always engaged the insurance partners. There are several who are sponsors in their own capacity in rugby. The biggest challenge is the cost. We've done the workings. Even when I was a member of the Kenya Cup caucus, we did those same workings to see how do you get all the players insured. And you're looking at a cost of almost 15,000 per player per year for a very base level cover from a private insurance company. So that times the number of players that you wish to insure. So, and medical insurance costs have been going up. So really at the end of the day, clubs want to do it, but not all can afford it.
Okay.
So how do you ensure that? So we have to relook at the partnership engagement model. Maybe even for the clubs in the lower league, maybe do an NHIF as a starting so that they have a base. Because if you tell them 15,000 per player, they're struggling to honor fixtures. They're unlikely to do it.
Okay.
So that's something which we've also had engagements with NHIF as KRU to try and see how they can come on board with a pool-wide cover for all the players.
All right. Let's move on to you, Sasha. And Sasha, you mentioned player insurance specifically in your manifesto, saying that this was going to be a priority with respect to player welfare. And of course, there are other aspects of player welfare that we'll get to in a moment. But given Oduor's explanation about the cost itself, if you multiply 15,000 by, say, what's a pool of players right now?
Let's take 50.
Let's even take 50.
We did 40 per club. We have done the same numbers.
And you've done the same numbers.
Actuary.
All right.
Using numbers. We know.
So give me your answer on how exactly the union is going to bear this cost.
When I become chairman, we'll make sure that the Kenya Rugby Welfare Player Welfare Association is started. And that will have membership from current players, former players. We'll have Dennis Awori here and Rav Zomo there, as long as Collins Injera, myself, Gangi, all of us are going to be part of that. As we pull together, right now, registered players should be something like 2,400, less than 3,000 registered players. We're going to build that to 5,000. If you look at a club, we're talking to the same actuary. To get an accident cover is 15,000 bob a year. That's 600,000 bob for a club. Once we come in and attract these sponsors, $600,000, $6,000 for a corporate putting into our 60 clubs or so, it's not a big deal. Because once we start attracting at the top, we'll be the beautiful lady walking or handsome gentleman, in that case. We will be the flower that everybody wants to come. We'll be the person they want to court. So it's not a big thing. I mean, 600,000 bob a year for a club is nothing, but it makes a whole big difference. And I am part of that because I broke my leg. Luckily, before I started playing rugby, my mother made sure she got insurance for me. But how many people can afford that? I was very lucky. And it saved me. That's why I'm standing here.
That's a crux.
Very important.
At the time that you played, there was a very different demographic of players that were playing this game. And it was a very small crowd, if you have me say that. Now, the beauty about rugby is that it is now democratized.
Absolutely.
To the extent that you have people of completely different demographics than you had while growing up. People who cannot afford 600 bob, let alone 600,000 for their club.
I'm saying that corporates will come in.
I understand.
The players will put in maybe 100, but they have to have collective responsibility. You have to put in something. Don't expect anything for free.
So let me ask you a specific question to that. How much money are you going to look to sponsors to raise specifically for that line item of insurance?
For that, once we'll get in the former insurance partners. One of the big ones was UAP, who was there during the Super Series, of which I make sure it'll come back. And they're waiting in the wings for the Super Series to happen. Okay? So we need an insurance partner. Once we have this Kenya Rugby Players Welfare Association with the current players, retired players, we'll have the corporates coming in and putting in seed money. We should also have within that a benevolent fund. Sidindi just passed away last week, so for something like that, a player who dies or is permanently injured, the benevolent fund from that, where the players are part of it, I don't know why we're scared of players. Because we're not treating them well, that's why we're scared of players. Under my administration, with my able colleagues who will join me in this fight, to bring this game to where it should be. We shall move this thing so far that, money will be coming.
All right.
We'll be the beautiful, we'll be the apple of the sports eye in this country.
All right. Gangla, I'm going to move to you, right? In your first 100 days of your administration, should you be elected, right? What are you going to do with respect to clearing arrears for players who perhaps the union still owes, if they do owe, and how are you going to address the issue of player welfare going forward?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think my thinking about the first 100 days is to say, how do we remedy the situation with commercial partners? And I think it's very important for us to change the narrative around rugby. We've all been selling this World Cup dream, etc. to the sponsor, but is that what the sponsor is looking for? So I think it's time for us as a fraternity to step back a bit and just ask ourselves, how do we create alignment of purpose? I want Kenya to go to the World Cup. But at times you talk to people and it enters this year comes out of the other because it's not aligned with their strategic objective.
Yeah.
The second thing why we have to change our narrative is around impact. I think rugby has a great impact story, but we've not been able to tell it. Not everyone is going to make it to play for Kenya, but rugby has still touched their lives in many different ways. And I think we need to come out with a very strong social impact message of what rugby has done and how it can align with the corporates. And I think that's the way to bring the corporates back. If you go tell them, want to go to 2023, so what? You want to go, what about us? So what? So I'm thinking that's important. To do that, in addition to the board, we have to bring on board other stakeholders as well. We'll definitely need to reach out and include a sort of advisory council.
Okay.
There are people who are very big Rolodexers, like Richard Omwela, Dennis Awori, Kip Mukulu, and we need to get all these guys involved.
We've got 10 seconds now.
For welfare, it's really not just about the money. The money is important. We are making commitments which we can keep, and that's the first step. Everyone wants us to pay her salaries, but we sort of said it's not sustainable. So having that discipline and keeping a consistent message ensures that your base is covered, everyone knows what to expect. We create predictability and certainty about what we're going to do and what we can provide.
Okay. Asiko, concrete steps on how to deal with the perennial issues that crop up with player welfare. It's not just insurance, but there's many other issues that's around that.
It will be my first priority is actually to have a sit around with the players. Indeed, the most important one first will be to solve the Kenya Sevens players problem, which is through a sit around. We can't have good players out there because they refuse to sign contracts. We have to come out with real issues and to be candid with them. Let's not make promises we can't keep. It's important that we just tell them that and appeal to them and tell them, look, it's also your turn to take a step back. We'll have to, get some middle ground in this.
Okay.
That is very important, outside of insurance. When it comes to other issues of the players, as we all know, they have a union or a society. We have to sit down with them and concretely lay out what we can do and what we can't do.
Yeah.
And go down to basics. If we are candid with them and tell them this is what we can do and this is what we can't do, surely, I believe they're human beings. They know the situation as it is.
Yeah.
They know the union is in dire straits. They will also hear us and accept it.
All right.
So talking to them is the most important first of all.
Now, there's lots of issues that we could get into player welfare, but I'd like to talk about development of different cadres of the game. And I'll start with a question that's coming from Twitter, from @Alexis. Our girls have been doing very well with limited resources. What are you going to do, Asiko, with respect to the building, the development of women's rugby, given how much they've been able to do with so little?
I must salute them for where they've reached today. They have a tournament ongoing, and it's really, a good show. And it's also soliciting a lot of media coverage and support. We must take it to the next level. The girls' rugby must be stepped up. For me, as I propound, we are going to develop rugby through academies. Some clubs have them, some don't have them. But the academies are going to be not only boys through 8th grade, but will also include the girls' rugby. Women's rugby should be played across the region. To start with, I would look forward to inculcate and entice the likes of Cabras to have a sure ladies rugby team. We have clubs in Nairobi that have. We must put in one in Eastern. We must put in one in Coast. And this is just talking through the clubs.
All right.
Through their own local sponsors.
You've got 10 seconds to conclude your answer.
And this can happen a lot through starting with the basics, their own local sponsorships, and agreeing to play within the resources that they have.
Okay. Sasha, I'll ask you the same question. How are you going to develop, what is your step-by-step plan in terms of developing women's rugby?
Okay, so first of all, I'm very ambitious. So this thing of stepping back, we know there's a big hole of 82 million. We know this country is not poor. The big corporates are reporting super profits every year, so the money is there. We just need to get it in, and I'll make sure that happens. With girls rugby, we need to get rugby at the primary school curriculum. So we will engage with there's a new minister, and he's actually my neighbor. We shall engage the ministry. Yes, he is. You have to use what you have, you know. My next door neighbor.
All right. So, then use your last 30 seconds to answer the question.
We need to get rugby in the primary school as a curriculum sport, and which comes to what I said before. When we're playing, guys who start playing at 6, 7 years old, and we start playing at 14, there's a big difference. So it's to get rugby in the school curriculum, not even set up high-performance centers, because we're not going to go into capital expenditure. We're going to use the schools that are already available there, including the private schools.
Yeah.
When I was in director of Kenya Sevens, we had a very good partnership with Brookhouse School. It had better facilities than Kenya Rugby. Kenya Rugby right now has very few assets, a few containers.
10 seconds.
And no ground. So we have to partner with international schools and with the local primary schools.
All right. Gangla, you've got a minute to either rebut what has just been said or answer the question about women's rugby. I'll leave that to you.
I think the reason why we have no ground was when Sasha served on the board. The plan to buy the ground was stillborn. 2, clubs in championship are struggling to raise $1 million shillings to honor all their fixtures the whole year. So when he says 600,000 is a little money, clearly he's out of touch with reality. It's a struggle every week for the majority of the games. There are not more than 6 or 7 clubs which have insurance of the community clubs. Forget the universities who may have.
Yeah.
For women rugby, the clubs must adopt it. The clubs must adopt women's rugby. If you want to go into schools in a sustainable way, you must use the club as the anchor. You can't run school rugby and club rugby in parallel, as if they're separate entities. Because what we are lacking is the natural pathway. People come through the system, they play, after school they leave. We have 10,000 students leaving school every year who play rugby. Where do they go? That's a big problem. So I'd look at, and I've seen some of the clubs have now started taking up the women's rugby. It's a bit of a cost. KRU has also been putting a bit of money to fund some of these programs, but it's not enough. We have been in discussion with potential new partners specific for the women's. So I think the brighter days lie ahead for the women's team. I really wish them well as they go to the qualifiers in 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, now I've got a question for each of you with respect to development of the game, especially at the ground, right before we go to break. I'd like in 30 seconds, gentlemen, and let's try and respect this. In 30 seconds, what are you going to do with respect to operationalizing the issue of sub-unions to ensure that this game is now becomes part of the counties in a real and tangible way, Asiko?
First and foremost, it's not only the sub-unions. As it is, our rugby has spread, and I salute the union for that. But we must grow rugby across sub-unions. But not only that, I insist on the restructuring of the tournaments to have a university league, university's own league. If you look at Kenya Cup today, the 3 bottom clubs are 3 universities. These 3 universities even have players who are playing for the top clubs.
Yeah, 10 seconds.
This is not acceptable. So we must have sub-unions, and we must have a university-only tournament.
Okay, Gangla, same question, 30 seconds.
KRU has already facilitated the Universities League. We are working closely with the Kings of Rugby and also the University 15s. I think people are free to choose whether they want to play in Kenya Cup or not. Sorry to say, but some of these university teams who are at the bottom are very competitive. They've been beating teams at the top as well, and you need that in a league. And then finally, on sub-unions are there in the Constitution. In my time in the board, we've worked with affiliates. These sub-unions have to be driven bottom-up.
Yeah.
KRU can't decide to impose a sub-union on a certain region.
10
It was
seconds.
tried, it failed. So let's develop sub-unions bottoms up. I can tell you Central Kenya is working on a sub-union. We are working with them. North Rift is working on a sub-union.
All right,
and it's
thank you very
bottom-up.
much. Thank you very much. Sasha, final word on sub-unions.
Yeah, sub-unions are there, as you said, in the Constitution. And, of course, it's also up to the affiliates. The Universities League, I've talked about it. It doesn't have too much support. We need to bring it in. We need to have TV coverage for the Varsity League.
Yeah.
And what I put in on my manifesto is I believe when you work hard, there has to be a prize. So I've already talked to the South Africans that we can actually have the inter-university team or the team that actually wins our varsity league here going to play in the varsity trophy in South Africa. So I believe work and reward. Okay. But I'm very ambitious. The money is going to come. So let's not think small. When you think like this, you're going to get this. When you think like this is all you're going to get.
All right.
Nothing.
All right. I think that it's time for a break. We're going to take a short break. We're going to take a short break, ladies and gentlemen, here from the Thomas More Auditorium at Strathmore University. We'll be back. Prepare your questions, ladies and gentlemen, because after the break, I'll ask one or two questions, then I'll turn it over to you here, as well as you at home. So prepare your questions. Tweet me on @JohnAllenNamu, #KRU Decides. We'll be back in 2 minutes. See you then. Thank you. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are live at the Strathmore University, and this is the last few minutes of this debate, the final leg, so to speak. I'm just going to ask one or two questions, and then the rest of the session is really easy to me. I turn the microphone over to you to ask questions, as well as you at home. Remember what to do at home. If you want to ask a question, use the hashtag KRU Decides. I'll be looking through some of those and asking questions, as well as directing them to our candidates here. Now, the final two questions that I'd like to ask is with respect to development and some of the long-term plans that you have with rugby, right? So rugby has become, in a sense, in certain quarters, reduced to Kenya Sevens, right? To the shorter version of the game. But we have what is in rugby circles called the original, perhaps the purest form of rugby, which is a 15-a-side version of the game. And I'd like to know what your plans, and I'll start with you, Sasha. What are your plans to be able to take us from the point where we are, where we're just stopping short of qualifying for the World Cup, to a team that regularly competes not just at the level that we're playing at, but with top-tier teams globally, of course, given the opportunity that that World Rugby has just given with the new format of the World Rugby Nations Championship?
Yes, thank you very much, John Allen. As I said before, having rugby as a curriculum sport in primary schools, in public primary schools, it's played in international schools. To get it in public primary schools, and with the budget from the Ministry of Education. Now, in high school, I mean, these kids will have learned how the basics of the game.
Yeah.
So by the time they get to the national team level, or even before that, age grades, under 16, under 18, they know the basics, and we are building on that. As I said, I have this big ambition, and I believe you work, results, prize.
Yeah.
I've already been told that by our good friends in South Africa that we will be able to play in the Grand Combo Cup. So we'll have a combined Kenyan schools team that is playing in South Africa against better opposition. We cannot get to the Craven Cup, believe me, right now at our level. So Grand Combo Cup and Academy Week. Now, when we get to the national team level, we need to bring back Super Series, where we have our franchises and have the best players showcased here for the national team coach to choose. I've also been assured that next year, we will have an opportunity to participate in the Super Sport Challenge Cup in South Africa, which is what, when I was in office, we got Kenya to play in the Vodacom Cup. And now with the sponsorship that will come in, our players will play at the highest level that they can. And you can see even our former coach has now been appointed head coach of Western Province Challenge Cup team.
All right. Let me jump in there. Yeah. You speak at length in your manifesto about using South Africa's talent, South Africa's experience to be able to bring us up to that stage.
Yeah.
At what point will we have our own infrastructure to be able to do this without the help of the South Africans? Because at one point we also want to beat the Springboks.
Absolutely. You have hit the nail on the head there. We need to play better position, have better coaches. Right now, we only have 2 level 3 accredited coaches in Kenya, which is a shame. We don't have that. We need to build our capacity. So we'll get the best coaches available in South Africa, and it's a no-brainer in terms of business. It's the shortest distance to travel, and it's a tier 1 nation. So we're going to use South Africa. That's, we don't need to get it to New Zealand, although most of your people here are all black supporters. I'm sorry. I can see a Springbok over there. But that's a reality.
All right.
So, and we've been offered this, and we should take it.
10 seconds. That's it?
That's it, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Gangla, let's go to you. What's your long-term plan to be able to get us playing at the highest level of rugby globally?
For us to be competitive, we have to start the selection process at under 16 level. We have already seen the formation of the Prescott Committee. We have Mwalimu Kombo and Mr. Karimi. They've worked very hard, working closely with the union. We've put together a sponsorship for that, and part of that is the select side there is going to start touring this year. And the key is to build on such initiatives where you get commercial partners to also underwrite the funding of those costs. So despite the bleakness, there were also some great moments where we saw school rugby progress. Yeah. This June, we are restarting the Super Series, and probably from next year, we want to cascade it to age grade. So if you start with 4 franchises at the senior level, then you do under 20, then under 18, under 16. I think over the next 3 years, that has to be the target, so that you have standing regional teams. You cannot develop if you have a weak foundation. And so the selection has to start early. All right. You have to expose these players to the top coaches, working closely with the clubs, because the clubs already have the infrastructure and they have the technical capacity.
Let me just jump in there for your final 45 seconds and talk about the technical bench, right? So we've spoken about the players and how we intend to develop them. What's the plan to develop the technical bench and the technical capacity here in Kenya?
As you've seen, from the experience we've had, we've seen the need to build broad-based capacity. We want to ensure that coaches work together for longer periods. And part of the thinking around the discussion of Paul Odera and his technical team moving map is to build that continuity. They've been working with a group of young players for the last 4 years. Yeah. And we see that this is the group which will form the bulk of the team that will take us to the next World Cup.
All right.
There are certain areas of technical weaknesses which you noted in the reportage. There is obviously strength and conditioning for the 15th game. There is the defensive pattern approach, and there's the set piece.
All right.
I think Kenya has attack. If we can remedy those three at a top level, then we are well on our way.
Okay.
In addition to South Africa.
No, let me leave it at that so that we can give Asiko an opportunity to respond. Asiko, same question.
Yep.
Yeah. How are you going to be able to develop us to play at that level?
Well, Alan, partly I do agree with Oduor Gangla, but importantly for me, my song and my preaching will be, we must go back down to the basics. Mm-hmm. I'd like every club in this country that is playing at the Kenya Cup to have their under-23s, have their under-16s, under-19s, under-16s. Then the universities playing on their own, and then we can go to the secondary schools, Prescott's, and thereafter move to primary schools.
Yeah.
For me, that is most important. We must start at home. Let's not sing about South Africa. We're singing about South Africa. South Africa, who's South Africa? They're so far from us. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even our coaches today that we have, how much time will they have to dedicate? They're working, you know. Will the employer let them go to South Africa for all that time? Mm-hmm. If you ask the Kenya squads today, how many of the players make it even for the high performance and conditioning training in South Africa? There's a challenge. So let's start at home with our basics. Let us start for the coaching level. Use the coaches who are accredited coaches of coaches, like Tanko Tiena. Let him do sessions for schools.
Yeah.
Let him do sessions for move on to the universities.
You have 30 seconds.
As we go back. And then that is the way we'll have it, because we must have a stronger player base to play a World Cup. Mm-hmm. To be honest, we were definitely outbeaten. So it doesn't matter if we make Paul Odera a super coach, as you know, good enough to coach the Springboks, yet the coaches below him who are feeding him with the players are feeding him with the inept players.
Okay.
So we must go to basics.
We'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now your opportunity to ask questions. So before we start, I'll ask one from Twitter so that we can get our runners in place to get our microphones to you. First question, and I'll throw it to you, Gangla, from at WNabs. His Twitter name is Stan Lee. He seems to be a person who's been playing for a while. The infrastructure, the rugby infrastructure, has been the same since the day I started playing rugby in 1998. Any plan to build a new stadium or upgrade the famous RFUEA?
I go for it?
Yes.
We had actually developed a plan. We're working closely between RFEA, KRU, Harlequins, and SportPesa to redevelop the side on the Ligindogo side so that you can put more seating capacity. One of our great achievements as a board is 15s rugby has become very popular. We saw very large crowds in last year's 15s, and the seating capacity is not adequate. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, we need to have our own facility. We need to have our own high-performance center. The board has adopted a policy where we'll move test matches around the country, very much like they do in South Africa or New Zealand. So, but a facility for training, for selection of players, for high-performance camps is essential.
All right. Sasha, let me move to you. At Wanyaga Moses asks, what are their plans to develop another crucial arm of the game, referees? Over the years, it's been perceived that the union and refs are at loggerheads. How will they solve this and also work to improve officiating standards? I can't ask it to all of you. I'll ask Sasha.
Okay. Yeah, we need to empower the Kenya Rugby Referees Association. Again, when we had Super Series, it was a very, very good partnership there with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, with Chabeda there. You know, if we're playing at a high level with our players and the officiating is poor, that's a disservice to the game. We need to first of all recruit more referees. Before, we used to have many ex-players who would become referees. Right now, it's not happening. We're getting referees who have not played the game. It's not a must that you play the game, but it's actually better. We need to make it sexy that you can, you know, as a referee. So retention of referees, education of referees. In the sub-unions that will happen, we need to have referees from the sub-unions. So also to keep our costs down, And of course, as I said, there has to be a reward thing.
Yeah.
If you progress in refereeing, why don't we have a referee, a Kenyan referee, center referee in the HSBC sevens? We've been in finals. We have won a final. We've been in 2 World Cup 7 semi-finals. But where are our referees? So we need to build that capacity, coach them, and reward them.
All right. Asiko, I'd like to ask you one question also from the crowd. Of course, this is one that I could ask to all of you, but I'd like to ask it to you. What will your legacy be if you become elected? What will your legacy be after 4 years once you exit the stage?
My legacy will be straightforward. I love setting structures, systems, and procedures that will run Kenya Rugby from the union level down to the club level, to the universities, to the schools, that will keep on going and will be sustainable into perpetuity, regardless of who the chairman is.
All right. Thank you very much. I'd like to turn it to the audience now. And whoever has a question, please raise your hand. I'll come to you as quickly as I can. Let's start with this gentleman here, if we can get a microphone to him. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, when you're asking a question, just give us your name, where you come from, and a brief question. No comments, please. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, John. My name is Walter. I represent Kisii. And I have a couple of questions for...
One question, please.
I have one question. So let me segment the questions, huh?
No. Just ask one question.
Okay, my question goes to Sasha Mutai. Sasha Mutai is a witness in a case against Kenya Rugby Union of a contract that he himself signed as a vice chairman. The question now lies with ourselves. If Sasha Mutai becomes the chairman of Kenya Rugby Union, how is he able to handle the same? Because he has a case that he's a witness, and now he's going to answer for the same.
All right. Thank you very much, Walter. I'll leave that to you to answer, Sasha.
Yeah, when you've been subpoenaed, you have to appear in the case. It's an arbitration case. There was actually 2 of them. And when you're subpoenaed, you have to appear as a witness. So I was called to check whether I had signed the contract, and I signed the contract for the rugby, the 7 coaches.
All right. That's a second
question. It's a legal thing. I'm an arbitrator as well. I'm an arbitrator, but yes, all I did was appear as a witness. That is it.
Okay.
And it's a fact.
All right. Who else? Let's go here to the front. Right here. Please give us your name and where you're coming from, and make your question brief, please.
Fred Oloz is my name. I currently serve as Director of Rugby Impala Saracens. But my question, the question I would like to ask the lot, but now because he has the least club experience, Sasha, what is the one thing you will do for the different sections of the game? We have nationwide, we have championship, and we have Kenya Cup. All of these have different challenges. But what is the big priority for you in each one of these leagues?
All right. Thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you very much, Fred. Now, the most expensive league that I've actually seen is actually the championship side. Championship trophy. When you have a team playing in the coast, traveling all across the country, and the subsidy that they get from the union is very little, like 100,000 shillings. I'm going to bring in also affirmative action. If a team has got very big distances to cover, why should they be getting the same amount of money like every other club that is just participating in Nairobi?
Okay.
Now, as I said, I'm very sure the money is going to come in, the corporates are going to come in, and that money will be distributed, but it'll have to be accounted for by all the clubs.
All right.
And that's why every weekend is not sustainable. Maybe I'm doing this for my own selfish reasons, that I don't want to be sending M-Pesa for clubs to be honoring the fixtures. It should not happen with the talent that we have here. And the problem that these clubs don't have sponsorship is because even the current rugby union has no sponsorship. We don't have a main sponsor for our most beautiful property.
Okay.
Once this is corrected, everything will be okay.
Sasha, I'll ask you to leave it there. Let's have another question from the audience. Let's go here. And then I'll go to the back. Name, please, and one question.
My name is Mwangi Karimi. I'm the chairman of Kenya Rugby Referees Now Association. And I think you have mentioned a little bit about match officials. And my question goes to the 3 candidates. What's the space of match officials in your strategic plan? And in relation to that,
should there be representation at the board level? Because match officials form a huge position in this case.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start with you, Asiko. Same question going to everyone, but start with you, Asiko.
I fully concur with the position propounded by the Kenya Rugby referees chairman. It is time we brought them in the space of the union. Secondly, in our development plan, just as we want to do with coaches, it's important, as has been said also, through sub-unions, unions, the academies, to also put in